Awesome. Welcome everybody to the June 8th identifying security work groups meeting. Sorry, identifying security threats working group meeting. I'm your host. So I don't have too many big topics for today. Really, it's just project updates, any other business. I think last time we talked about a couple things, including like changing the name of the working group, office hours, give a little bit of update on Alpha Omega, things like that. But it's a good time for open chat. If there's anything that you guys want to talk about, or if you guys would like some time back, this could also be a relatively short meeting. So, do we have any new? No. Yeah. If there's anybody who doesn't regularly attend who would like to introduce themselves, feel free. Cool. Okay, project updates. Luigi, you have to give an update on how Security Insights is going.
Yes, I have opened a PR in the OpenSSF repo, because now the repo is directly in our organization. I have added you as a reviewer just because it is a good practice, not for other reason. And now I have added in the dependency section one for the SBOM. There is now at the moment a clear standard for SBOM file, or if there is, I miss it. I consider that probably the most popular is Cyclone DX by OWASP, but I am not totally sure. But the SBOM value is quite generic. You can add, and yes, the SPDX. Yes, exactly. Thank you. And but this SBOM section is quite generic. You can add the URL to the file, and also you can add the standard that you are following. So if the scanner wants also to read the SBOM file, they can. And now I'm working to a Python command line to help the maintainer to create this file. I am using click packages to create the command line, honestly. And in this way, the command line can help the maintainer to create the security insight, and it can also check in real time if the value is correct or not. So you don't need to create one and then check. The next step is to add this Python script to the repo. For that, probably I will ask a good review, because I'm not so good as Python developer, so I prefer to have a double or triple check. And that is, I was a bit slow in the last 4 weeks, honestly, for personal reason, but now I have time to work on it. The main issue is how to handle the communication still for me. And also in OpenSSF, I mean, we have a lot of repo, a lot of projects. For example, there is not a good repo, best practice for package manager, that I didn't remember. I didn't remind, and it's not correlated to the security insight, but it is another topic that interests me. So after that, I have added the Python script to link the code and to create the file. Probably I need to understand how we need to proceed to communicate better in OpenSSF and with third-party packages and service. When I move on GitHub, I see that a lot of repo have a lot of file and configuration that I have ever seen in my life. So probably something similar can help to group everything and collect data. That is.
Terrific. Do you need help with like planning out how to better engage OpenSSF?
I need help, definitely,
okay.
Because I'm seeing that SBOM is a very popular topic at the moment, even if there is not a clear standard, and the security insights at the moment support a generic SBOM. You add the link, you can add also multiple links, because I don't know if some big project can create different SBOM just to have a more compliant approach to this security requirement. But Yes, I need a good way to communicate with a different team to be aligned on it.
Did you present this to TAC already, or was it a different?
I presented it to the CNCF.
CNC. Okay. So TAC is meeting Tuesday next week.
Tuesday next week. I try. I mean, I think I can connect to the meeting. I can book my calendar and
okay,
I can join it.
Maybe let's do this. Do you want to send out a or post a message in the Slack TAC channel? Say, hey, we'd like to present this. I'm happy to go with you, support you, whatever way. But
yes, I think it is a good idea. Yes, if I remember right, I don't have presented this still to the TAC meeting. Perfect. Okay, it is a good action item.
Good. And then I think the outcome that I think we want out of that is getting the TAC to support all of the OpenSSF projects using it, as well as like, should we have like an external? Should we have a blog? Should we like, how do we communicate this better? And at what the ordering of that is? Like maybe we do it for ourselves first, then the blog, and then
yes.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Cool. Any other questions on security insights? Wonderful. Metric dashboard. Christine, I don't know if you have an update.
Yeah, I'll just kind of give you an update since it's been probably about 4 weeks since our last update. And in the last couple of meetings, there was like the overall question. We were just basically following up with what happened from like stream 2 from the White House, and just trying to kind of like understand what was the meaning of that. So there was like some open questions around like the stream 2 funding, and then also how to collaborate best with the folks who were tasked with the new risk assessment dashboard. And also around there was like a selection that was around LFX, but we decided that since there were like some things that were still kind of like unknown or open around like what the platform would look like, we decided that we were probably going to spend time focusing more on the content, and perhaps maybe also think a little bit more about like, if there was a platform that was selected, what should be the criteria for what that platform should look like. So kind of like focusing more on the content. So we were diving into things like, who are the personas of the folks who would want to consume the content for this dashboard? And we identified like a developer, security, somebody, a researcher, OSPO, maintainer, and potentially government. And then even within government, we thought that there might obviously be different types of, even within governments, there might be like different types of entities under government. And then the question even around the personas is, how would they want to consume this data? Would they want to consume it via an API? Would they want to go into different dashboards? So that was one of the questions, some of the conversations we had last week. And then we also talked about criticality data, and talking about, there was like open discussions around how the data that's weighted, because there's, I think even within say a project like scorecards, there's been like discussions around if the data is biased, and maybe some folks may want to actually just consume the data and like do their own weighting around it. So there's some open questions that maybe folks in this call might know more about.
Okay. There was a good discussion within these securing critical projects working group, specifically on criticality and how to measure it and what it really means. And the more we talked about it, the less it seemed that we were sure what the words meant, or what we intended by the words. So I think that there's a lot of opportunity to bring clarity to.
Okay. Oh, okay. Yeah, I think that was also the same thing. It's like maybe just kind of go to the different types of personas, and I don't know. It was still an TBD, kind of like seemed like an open question, more discussion needed, I guess. And it's probably being discussed in various working groups.
It is, yeah, I'm sure. So just bring a little bit of clarity to like stream 2. So after the DC meeting, OpenSSF now has a commitment of more funds. Those my understanding right now is that the intended way for those funds to be distributed is through the working groups and the projects to say, hey, we'd like to do X, we need Y dollars to do it. Now there's a pool that which we can kind of pull from. By no means is that process kind of ironed out, but it is almost certainly not going to be like Brian or Jim is not going to say, great, we formed the risk team, we've hired 4 people and they're driving this project. It'll be organic from the bottom up. So I would certainly say connect with the other folks from Stream 2, but don't expect there to be a top-down like proclamation of like, this is the project that we will be doing.
Okay. Yeah, I think one of the thoughts around it, and I'll kind of like come to that, is potentially get some of the folks from Stream 2 basically to join into the discussion. And so there was also like a thought about actually making this metrics, this dashboard effort be like a sub, like almost like an official, and we didn't know how that would, how to go about that, but make it like a sub project of like the security of this particular working group.
Yeah, I would, I mean, I would consider it already kind of that.
Informally?
So, yeah, informally, feel free to just kind of drive it, invite whoever to whatever meetings you want to have on it.
Yeah.
You know, I think it makes sense to have the actual like nuts and bolts discussions be outside of this normal working group meeting. But that's kind of like what you've been doing with Jay and Vinod.
Okay, because I think what people wanted to do is they wanted the calendar to be open and make sure that like it's published in the OpenSSF calendar, so anybody who wanted to join would be able to do so.
Perfect. Just send a note to Jory or Jen, and just say, hey, could you add a recurring invite? Tell them when, and they'll add it to the calendar. Actually, maybe we can just do this right now because I think I have update access to this.
Okay.
Think about when you'd like to have the meeting. Shoot me something in Slack, and I'll take care of it.
Okay.
Cool.
Right now it's conflicting with another OpenSSF, so I think we probably have to shift the time. Okay, so that would be the action items there. And then we didn't know what other process beyond just making it a calendar meeting that we needed to go through.
Yeah, I think that's probably the right thing is to open it up to anybody to participate, and then just kind of drive it as a project.
Yeah. Some of the other topics we talked about was vulnerability data. There was like currently there's like a few vendors where that data is being surfaced from, and there was like a question around, should we create a criteria around like the vendor selection, for example? Some of the vendors have like a freemium model, and we're thinking about, should it just be something that's always freely available? So anyway, from the last meeting where we have action items, is just to basically explore the different vulnerability data sources, and also think about what other data that we should be adding to the dashboard. And then also the criteria for platform selection that I bet based on what the community actually needs. So those are kind of like the major points that we're thinking through.
Awesome. Thank you. Any other questions on that from anybody? Wonderful. Moving on, office hours. So we talked about this last time. I put a request out to the best practices working group. Got a couple of folks that said, hey, I'd like to participate, but I don't have time to drive. Asked on general, got, I think, the same thing. Wanted to open up one more time for here to see, is there anybody that would like to drive this effort? And what I mean by driving this effort is basically like logistics, setting up the meetings and making sure that there's enough coverage there. Validating the design to see like, is the open office hours idea, should we do that, or should we do kind of a sign up for a slot thing, and then get the word out on Twitter and I guess an OpenSSF blog, and then run it for 6 weeks, 8 weeks, something like that, and then wrap up, think about how it went. Should we continue it? Is there something we should do to improve it? And then kind of have that end. So it's a relatively time boxed thing. Wonderful, Marta. Thank you.
Of course, if there is someone who would like to call it, that's more than welcome.
Would anyone like to co-own this? Marta, the floor is yours. Thank you. Appreciate it. We do have a bunch of other folks that volunteered to be part of it, so I will. I'll send out an email, or I'll start a Slack conversation with you and everyone else that expressed interest, and that way you have everybody, and we can go from there.
It means I need to join the Slack channel.
Okay. Do you need an invite for that? Let me know the invite for.
The stuff is public, and I will ping you when I make.
Awesome. Thank you. Cool. Any other questions of office hours? Wonderful. For Alpha Omega, quick update. We are continuing to go through hiring. We are feeling good about a couple of the candidates we've been talking to. I'm hoping to land them very soon, but hiring is hard. We're also planning, so Michael Windsor and I will be in Austin in 2 weeks for OpenSSF Day. So we're going to talk about Alpha Omega then. So we're putting together a deck. We're hoping to have 2 more Alpha engagements announced. I really think we'll get at least one of them landed. I'm like 50%, 60% confident on the other one. For Omega, I mentioned last time that we published a bunch of kind of automated security reviews. So we ran the tool chain against a bunch of projects. For the ones that the tool chain found nothing, we expressed that in terms of a review and sent that off to security reviews. Separately, we started going through some of the findings where we did find like legit issues. And so I have one report out to I have 3 reports that are ready to go. One I've already sent out. The other 2 are just pending my time. We're looking, so we know we don't have a super well-defined vulnerability management process on our end. We've been working with a couple of folks to come up with something that works. So options are like the CERT Vince project. We could use that. We could use GitHub security advisories. We could use like private GitHub repos. We could create something completely separate. We could just use email. We could track things in a shared spreadsheet. Like kind of everything's on the table. I don't think we need to optimize for, thousands of vulnerability reports until we're actually generating thousands of vulnerability reports. I also think that the long pole in the tent is going to be in the back and forth or follow up, or I didn't hear anything from you in 2 weeks. Are we still going to fix this and things like that? We really need to hire the folks to manage this going forward, but we want to show some value even before that, because even if we find the perfect candidate now, it'll probably wind up being into August by the time they're actually kind of in the seat and productive. So we want to try to front load this as much as possible. That's kind of what's going on with Alpha Omega. Any questions? One more topic for that. We've been speaking, so we've had a number of conversations with, should say, security vendors, and the general, and these are starting to fall into a common theme. So the theme is a security vendor or security research firm or whatever has findings that they don't have a large enough team to like action them all, and but they would like to participate in Alpha Omega to some extent. And what we're thinking about is, number one, what criteria would we use to either yay or nay the inclusion of a commercial analysis tool in the, let's say, Alpha, but probably more Omega side of things. And second, is there a way that we can consume, let's say, minimally triaged, validated findings from a third party and just act as the final triager and, interface back with the with the maintainers directly. So a concrete example, well, not concrete, but I guess an abstract example. Luigi finds a vulnerability. He sends it to Omega. Omega looks at it and says, yep, this is a real vulnerability. We'll take it from here, and kind of sends it out. And the question is, does that meaningfully change the scope or the direction of Omega significantly enough where that's not actually what Omega was designed for? Because Omega was originally like, we find the vulnerabilities and we take care of fixing them. If somebody else finds the vulnerability, like, should we just pick up the second half of that? I don't have a super strong feeling on that. I feel like at the end of the day, it's, is the world better for us doing a thing? And if we're reasonably equipped to do that second half, like, why not? It wouldn't even be a bad thing to expand out Omega to act as a, I don't want to say just like a dartboard that people can like throw vulnerability at, and we'll like take it from there. Vinod?
Yeah, sorry, my 2 cents on that topic is there are so many existing platforms doing the same thing. Like as an example, I mean, Snake does, Hunter does. There are so many vendors who is currently mediating this vulnerability for open source projects, right? So why do we spread across? Can we just focus? I mean, it's kind of a, I'm not sure if I understood what you're saying correctly. Are you saying like a intermediary which will accept a vulnerability report and inform the upstream project and get it tried to fixed, and like a responsible disclosure, or coordinating the disclosure activity? Is that what you are saying, or is something completely different? I got it completely different.
Basically, what I'm really thinking about is like the entire chain from someone finds a vulnerability. Now, the someone can be an independent security researcher. They could be a security tooling firm that runs their tool against lots and lots of stuff. Through to kind of lots of other options, and then either they action it or they don't action it. And if they action it, that's great, and I don't really care. But if they don't action it, if that's because they're just great, they generated 150,000 potential vulnerabilities, they have 5,000 that they think are reasonably high confidence. If they don't have the people to do anything with that, I think one of the challenges is that the vulnerabilities sit in a database somewhere. And so these are, now you could, I think what you're arguing is, well, why wouldn't they just pump that to Snake or Hunter Dev or another party? I don't know the answer to that. Maybe it's because it's below the confidence bar that those other platforms need. Maybe it's because there are no write-ups, maybe for whatever reason. And maybe it's something that Omega can kind of be the, like grease the pipe that connects those two sources together. Or maybe those aren't, for a different reason, maybe those aren't the right platforms to do the disclosure, and Omega would do it ourselves. I'm not really sure.
The biggest challenge would be like how we will handle that disclosure and all the operational overhead it with, and some researchers may be expecting bounty for disclosing that, and there can be, as I mentioned, Snake or Hunter, and there are so many. Hunter even gave bounty for the person who is reporting it as well as the maintainer who is fixing the things, and there are so many similar platforms available there. Like so, it's a bit, to be honest, with a complicated area, and But I was thinking more like if it is something you mentioned the vendor tooling, right? Like if the vendor itself is approaching to add the tool because they found it or something, I was thinking in a different direction, like because the tools we are currently using for Omega may not have a good coverage for all the technology stack and all the, I mean, you consider CodeQL or SumGrep or SonarQube, all these tools, they are not a silver bullet for all the programming language or the framework or the technology, right? So yeah, I think we need to capture that gap, in my opinion, and trying to improve that area, right? Like where exactly we have the gap and improve. But yeah, I would like to hear others' opinion also on your idea. I think Luigi has hands up.
Yeah.
No, yes, to be sure that I rightly understood that we are trying to do a sort of triage process to understand if there is a vulnerability I mean, it sometimes can be, especially from scanner, can be, I mean, if there is a scanner that said that there is a vulnerabilities and we need to understand if we are really vulnerable to, or we have just an outdated packages. And this kind of triage is quite expensive, usually, especially if you don't know really well the project. Because if a researcher sends you a proof of concept, you need just to reproduce it and communicate with a human. But with a scanner, you have just a scanner that say, hey, there is a vulnerability. And if you are lucky, maybe the scanner give you a good proof of concept. Otherwise, there is just a flag. And sometimes it is, for example, for Log4j, it was important to identify all the Log4j in your project and fix them. But if you use or don't use them, because the vulnerability was too critical, but when you are in a gray area like high or medium vulnerabilities that can impact your project, but you don't know if the dependencies can be hacked using the exploit. That particular triage is expensive, and this means that people that do this usually they need to know really well the project or quite well. So create the environment, replicate, and I think there is a value in this this idea. But my question is, it can scale? We have enough people, or we have how we can do it? Because the risk is that maybe we just flag as not vulnerable, and then the project is vulnerable, and this is another problem probably. So I don't know if we have a procedure to mitigate false positive or false negative, one of the two terms, but the idea is good. I don't know how we can really scale or do it for that all alpha project especially. And I mean, if we consider also the Omega project, it can be very difficult. So
yeah,
if I rightly understood, I don't know, maybe I have misunderstood your idea.
No, I think it's all good. I mean, I wonder if like we would be in a better place as an industry if we just essentially connected the data sources of high quality vulnerability information directly into platforms like Hunter Dev, in which case we just kind of made the introductions and said, do the thing. And then the platforms kind of went their way and did everything. I think the problem is going to be, as you said, Luigi, when the vulnerability report is a one line that says you're using stir copy here, without enough context or POC or anything to make it compelling for a user.
Yeah, I think that is one of the benefit of, I mean, Hunter is as an example. There are many other similar platforms that they are rewarding both the person who is reporting and fixing. I mean, I think in that case, both parties will have interest to understand what is the problem and how they can fix it, right? Like, I think both of them will get rewarded in my opinion. But like as Luigi mentioned, I was also more worried about that operation complexity, like the false positive or triaging or dispute, like some maintainers may not agree that it is a vulnerability. Like, yeah, it's a...
Yeah.
But The idea is good because I think that a lot of open source projects have this problem. Not all the packages are updated, but not all the vulnerable packages are a real risk, as the scanners say. So probably find a balance between, okay, this vulnerability is risky enough for this project. I mean, we can ignore all the medium and we can analyze just the high and critical vulnerability in a particular project if the scanner say that the package is outdated. And we can try to understand if the packages need to be updated or not. Because sometimes updated packages means, for a security issue, usually the fix is small. Usually developer change just the vulnerable part. But if you are using a very old version, maybe there is a change in the API, and this means that you need to rewrite code in the entire maybe project. So this is the main reason why developers don't like so much to update packages. And so maybe we can define what is a real risk for an open source project and try to mitigate the high level risk. In this way, maybe we can scale better. And yes, this is just an idea. Then there is the other topic that a lot of open source projects have the dependencies for the product and the dependencies for the dev environment. If there is a critical vulnerability in the dev environment, is a real vulnerability? Yes, in my opinion, but the point is, the product is vulnerable or not, because it is, and everything is in the same repo. So I think that this topic is a very big topic, but it adds a lot of value. So again, we need to understand if we have enough people, we need to have a methodology, and so.
So just want to clarify my understanding, Michael. So are you thinking this as part of Omega, or it's a part of Alpha? Where exactly this will fit?
I think this is more Omega. I think the Alpha engagements, at least right now, and probably through the end of this year, are going to look and feel like the Node engagement, where we come up, we have an agreement with an external organization that can manage the funds, on a day-to-day basis themselves. We essentially will write a check in order to achieve security benefits for that organization. We did talk a bit about having Alpha be more of a team of security engineers, basically, that could go and be applied in different places. That's still possible, but at least right now, that's we're going to focus more on the other side of it. So anything that comes through this, I think, would be more on the Omega side. And the reason, sorry, and that's also because the organizations that we would be engaging with from an Alpha perspective will already have a response process. They'll already be able to manage themselves. They won't need to do this.
No, yes, I just want to clarify, because Omega is more about automation, right? Like I think Matt has its hands up. I will let him talk first. Matt.
Yeah, thanks. So first, love these conversations. What occurs to me, though, is I've been thinking about a lot and paying attention to and promoting what's happening at the Secure Software Factory work group. So to me, it's the drink your own champagne thing that I would love to make the group there, who is basically publishing a framework, a reference implementation with a set of tools and integrations, to make sure if we're promoting and they're looking to promote this framework and set of tools, that they've gone through the vetting process and run the prescriptive things that we recommend for Alpha Omega. I don't know how we make that happen.
1000% yes. I was only vaguely aware that they were going in the are they publishing like is it a doc that they're publishing, like saying, hey, we think you should use these things, or are they publishing like a ready to go toolkit?
Well, the group surprised me at how fast they're operating. It's more like a group of developers who are scrumming. It's crazy. So, I mean, their README actually has these list of tools and a framework. and their integrations are really being tightly coupled. They're tightly coupling SPIFFE and Spire. They're tightly coupling on certificate authority. They're doing crazy stuff on a rapid pace, and they're going to be driven to create a reference implementation very soon, according to the meeting they had last week. And they want to create an example using NPM of all things, which has a direct tie to Alpha Omega right now.
Matt, just want to clarify, you're referring about the software factory project, or is this something else?
The software factory work group primarily.
But the software factory's primary focus is to build a secure reference software, secure reference software factory, right? In the sense that it is more or less like a secure CI/CD system.
Yes.
Yeah, which can, so just want to clarify.
But let's be real here. I mean, everything they're offering independently, I know most major companies are looking at Tecton and all these technologies that they're putting there. So this is the future. You know, we can be looking in backwards and projects in the past, but this is the future, and this is what is actually creating the SALSA level 3 compliance evidence and documents and things like that. So it'd be great for us to assure that they're vetted and made.
That's a very good point. Like, I think that's the best practice to encourage for the open source project. But at the same time, I was with the original paper when we create the best practice paper and reference architecture one also, right? Like, so one of the big challenge, the focus in that area was, that team wasn't going focus too much on SAST or DAST or SCA, those kind of area that is a bit more complicated. I mean, considering the
I'm saying that any tools. So the thing is, first of all, most people are going to come to the OpenSSF via this path. They're going to say SALSA. How do I get to SALSA 3 compliance?
Yeah.
Okay, OpenSSF, how do I do it? And they're going to point to that reference implementation, iteration, different variations of those tools have been demonstrated at least 3 work groups that I know of in the past 6 months. So that's the face of the OpenSSF. That's the culmination of the work. If other work groups suggest that tools be embedded in different stages of more prescriptive pipelines, I think other groups are talking about that. But the basis, the foundation, the framework, the workflow engine, the runtime engine, and all the connective tissues to SigStore and whatnot are all going to be highlighted, and that they're going to create an NPM example, and that's what's going to be shown at every conference. So it'd be great to have a testimonial that all these things here have indeed been run through some of our core evaluation analytic tools.
I completely agree with you. I mean, it's a important thing. One of the big challenge for the team is the CI is purely on a Tecton. So Tecton is not necessarily a widely used CI by open source projects.
Even my own company, 99% of the people, 98% of my products, 2,000 products don't use Tecton. We're trying to make it easy for them, and the more security features we add, the less foot pounding, fist pounding, foot stomping they can do, and resist moving towards something that's more secure. People can cry all they want about Jenkins and Travis or whatever system you have,
or GitHub Actions, right? Like,
so I'm saying, but the group there, SSF basically says, you're welcome. Come here and show us how you do it with other solutions. They're welcoming
any GitHub Actions or Jenkins, whatever. But the current implementation is purely focusing on Tecton. So
it's my belief system, and most people working on this thing, that people are coalescing around Tecton as the framework and Tecton chains, because SigStore is connected to it and cosigns everywhere. So the connective tissue is being built, the momentum and inertia is there. So
So sorry, I just want to make sure that I have a link to the right link. Is this Fresca?
I can't send the link.
I think that's the new name is Fresca, I think. FR. Unfortunately, they've not done a good job at getting that indexed in Google search.
Okay.
It used to be called as the Secure Software Factory, Secure Software Factory, and yeah. the name.
But just to be clear, this is not a OpenSSF project. Is this a
It is
CNCF?
going to be OpenSSF. So
It's going to open.
company
I
could be-
would be surprised if it was not accepted as an OpenSSF
Yeah.
project.
yeah,
That's fine. Yeah, just
yeah, we are in the process of the public meetings, the community meetings and everything. So yeah.
cool.
So going back to the the SaaS piece, what I was saying, Michael, I think,
Yeah.
in my opinion, just my personal opinion, I think we should improve the automation areas wherever we can. I think it is important to find out the gaps of the tools we have, and I do believe that there won't be one SaaS tool or one SEA tool or one tool will fix all the problems. But I think it's all about for us to understand, what are the weakness of the tools we are using and what it is not good for, right? Yeah, I think that is important to cover. Otherwise, we may give a false security to a project, which may be a different language, different framework, different ecosystem. The tool is always saying you are good, there is no issue, but the tool may not have a proper support for that language or rules for that language. There can be so many challenges. I think it is important to have good coverage from an automation perspective before going for any manual or semi-manual kind of activity, right? I think it's important to cover.
Oh, yeah, I totally agree. I think that's speaking to the opposite side, the implementation side of the other side of the coin, which we have discussions at the critical projects one, or we debate endlessly what's the most critical projects, and it always comes up. People have different views of and the same thing with tooling. If your view is some tool or some view or something is more important based upon a language or something, then that's view is valid. So, but I want to point out the interesting thing is that although Tecton catalog is deficient in pluggability and security, conceptually, all the tools that are prescribed by the Alpha Omega work could be offered up as a tool chain that runs, ironically, in a secure software factory, right? So which would be a beautiful thing.
So I should clarify. The best case scenario, I think, in the future is that the patterns and practices that Omega creates to find vulnerabilities makes their way back into better quality, like raw tools, and better quality orchestrators like Fresca and Tecton, all that stuff. So if we if the lake dries up because we've done such a good job at pushing these vulnerabilities upstream that the maintainers find it themselves and we're out of a job, that is wonderful. So until that future happens, though, I think Omega should be focused on making sure that the tools generate very high quality, so that we don't waste time triaging garbage. But knowing that we will always be in between, we'll always have a human in between the tool output and the maintainer. Like we're never actually going to automate. I mean, I don't say never.
Well, I don't say you stop the automation directly. What I'm saying is you make the tool set consumable. So I think it's just a simple matter of, so the tools are containerized, that then you can create the task YAMLs and the pipeline YAMLs and publish those. I think that's within the realm of this work. Yeah.
Totally agree.
Yeah. So another opinion I have, there won't be a silver bullet tools which will be false positive free for all the programming language, all the technology stack, even SaaS or whatever tool it is, right? Yes, the tool should be good, but there can be some tools which are subject matter expert in particular stack, and that's why they may have good quality. But there are also different set of tools in the AppSec domain which are doing a consolidation and deduplication from multiple tools. So you don't give the raw result to the consumer. What you do is you feed all these different tool output to one tool, which will consolidate okay, these findings was reported by CodeQL, SumGrub, SonarQube. So this is 99% guarantee that it is a true positive finding. So we don't need to do a manual review.
I understand the sentiment, and I think that if the output of the at some point in the future, I would love that to be the case where we can just fully through automation, whether it's aggregation and dedupe and all that stuff, get a report out to a maintainer. I think for right now, the goal would still be like all of that stuff would help us be more efficient in our triage. But what I really want is the analyst comes in on a Monday morning, they see here are your top five issues that need to be triaged. Go through the first one, say, oh yeah, that one looks okay. Let me understand how that works. Oh yeah, okay. Write it up in a way that's consumable for a maintainer and send a report out, whether that's through Hunter Dev or directly or Vince, or doesn't really matter. But the value add that we provide is we make it easy for the maintainers to consume, to understand. They're not getting raw results. It needs to be like really high quality reports like that.
I didn't, sorry to interrupt you. I didn't mean consumer is the end maintainer. Consumer can be this analyst itself. So
yeah.
Imagine if there is one person and who has to triage thousands of findings, and having a tools or automation like that will help to reduce their workload, and it's just automation, more automation, right? Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. Cool. Any other thoughts on this or any other topic?
Yes, maybe one, if I can. It is interesting, the topic about expired domain in the open source. It is quite common, and maybe we should continue this topic maybe next meeting. But having tool or CI that check if the domain in the package manager is expired or something similar could be a good idea. It is not, I mean, sometimes there are false positive. I mean, maybe the domain is not expired. It's not so easy to understand if the domain is expired, apparently. And especially maybe the email associated to the package manager account is not the same of the domain. But at the same time, for a lot of reasons, a domain that is linked in a package manager web page, also if it is not user for the account, can be abused in a lot of ways, phishing or other access. So I think it is a good idea having it for not just NPM or PyPy, but also for other. Maybe we should formalize a project also for this. And the other topic is related to how to prevent this, because the domain can expire for a lot of reasons. So the NPM strategy to force the two-factor is probably correct. I don't know if we should suggest also to other package manager to force the two-factor in every account.
Well, this is interesting, Luigi, because like this topic was presented at 2 different work groups I know in the last couple of weeks.
Yeah.
And I know that it was discussed. I think the correct place to address this is at the Securing Software Repositories work group.
Yeah.
As they're moving to align, they're moving to standardize their metadata. They're moving to a more secure package managers. And as pointed out in one of the calls, one of the things, you could create all the tools you wanted, but just simply domain switching is not an indicator. Then one of the big breaches they brought up, someone pointed out, I think David Wheeler pointed out, if somebody got their email stolen. So basically they're impersonating the actual legitimate owner of the domain. And so that would never, you can't detect that. So I think it goes back, the onus needs to be put onto the ecosystem, and the package managers, I think, at least the ones represented at that work group, are serious about trying to close those loopholes. So, and then there are actually some, I think even this year, some are promising they were going to put out, even perhaps as part of some more secure repo effort, they might actually have fixed domains that they own themselves, kind of like a Bitly. You know, you have to buy a domain from them and things like that, and then they own it. And so anyway, so anything behind it changes, they'll track it. Yeah.
I also think that it might be hard or impossible for you to look. So when you look at a package metadata from the outside, you see some things. You see like an email address and whatnot. That email address is not necessarily the email address associated with the login to the platform to do the thing. So we learned, I think this is more anecdote than like I'm sure of this, but if that's not the case, then you can complain all you want about like expired domains of, you know, users of email addresses associated with old versions of a package, but it doesn't matter because that login, possession of that login account doesn't grant you any access. And the only party that really knows for sure are the software repositories. So Matt, I agree completely. This should be driven through that working group. It sounds like they're already well aware of this problem and are driving it, but maybe Luigi, if you want to participate.
That working group, I mean, in terms of all the work we do to secure our supply chain, having the key source where people pick up open source libraries, you know, fix the problem is the right approach. It's, you know, it's the building blocks. The building blocks need to be secure, you know, for us to build our house from.
Yeah, in my opinion, this issue is primarily related to lack of strong authentication mechanisms with the repositories itself, right? If the repositories were enforcing a strong authentication to someone to log in and publish and modify, even as domain takeover won't result in an account takeover activity. So technically they need to take over multiple factors, and it won't make it that easy. But I think this all goes back to, you know, in some cases, attacker may take over the GitHub account or a source code repository account, and they may, you know, upload them. But yeah, the chain need to be very secure, that there should be a strong authentication all the way from source to the repository, binary repository or package where they're publishing and from where they're getting it, right? So yeah.
Right, and these, that was part of the discussion that was had at that work group. And it's just, the problem is they have so many things on the table and so much ambition of what they want to do. You know, I just want to cheer them on. I don't want to get in their way because they're all moving in the right direction. And it's probably the most organic group we have in OpenSSF. And I want it to be organic. You know, the people are actually representing the repositories, leading the effort, and they have all the right things, ingredients on the table. We just have to make sure that they keep those items on the table. If they're going to create a new iteration of these things, that, you know, version 2, if everyone's going to step up to version 2 or version 3 or whatever it is, that it's got to be right. The metadata's got to be right. The signing's got to be right. The hashing's got to be right. The strong authentication is going to be correct. All those things, right?
Terrific. This was a great conversation today. Any last topics from anybody? Awesome. Well, thank you all. I really appreciate everybody's time, and see everybody in 2 weeks. Bye, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye.